Okay, so you scroll through social media these days, and it's just, wow. It feels like every celebrity is out there hawking their own spirit brand.
Yeah, it's unavoidable, isn't it? Actors, musicians, athletes, tequila, whiskey, gin, you name it.
And the prices.
Yeah.
I saw a stat that celebrity liquors cost like 73% more on average. It's a huge premium. You really have to wonder, what's behind that? What are you actually getting?
That's exactly what we're digging into today. We've pulled together quite a bit of research looking at this whole celebrity liquor thing,
Yeah.
how it exploded, how the stuff is actually made, what the value really is or maybe isn't. And of course, the business side of it. Where is it all heading? It's this really interesting mix of like fame and, well, fermentation.
Totally. So if you've been kind of curious or maybe just confused by how many of these brands are suddenly everywhere, this deep dive is definitely for you. We're aiming to cut through all the noise, give you the key takeaways, maybe some surprising facts, and just, make sense of this whole boozy trend.
Trying to offer some clarity.
Exactly. No fluff, just the essentials. And I guess the big question we're trying to answer is, are these brands real innovation, genuine value? Or are they just, really slick marketing exercises aimed at a big payday?
That's the core of it.
So let's start right there. How did celebrity booze get so massive, so fast?
Well, the growth really took off in the last, say, 10 years. It shifted beyond just, a famous face in an ad.
Right, like the old endorsement deals.
Exactly. Now you see celebrities taking actual ownership stakes, having creative input, really pushing their brands. And what's interesting is, even though the number of new brands launching seems to have cooled off a bit since 2022, the established celebrity brands, they're still generally crushing it compared to their categories overall.
Really? How much better are they doing? Got any numbers on that?
Yeah, definitely. If you look at 2023, celebrity whiskeys grew about 8% in volume, the whole whiskey market, only 2%.
Wow.
And rum was even more stark. Celebrity rums were up 11%, while the category shrank by 4%.
Ooh.
But tequila's been the real powerhouse. In 2022, celebrity tequila volume jumped 40%. The whole tequila category grew 13%, which is good, but
40%.
yeah. And even in 2023, with things slowing a bit, celebrity tequilas were still up 16% versus just 3% for the category.
Okay. Tequila's clearly the winner here. Why? What makes that celebrity connection work so well, especially there?
It seems to be a few things hitting at once. For younger drinkers, maybe feeling overwhelmed by choice, a name they recognize feels trustworthy. It's a shortcut.
Like a recommendation from a friend almost?
Sort of, yeah. And for the actual fans, it's a way to connect, to feel closer to that celebrity. Plus, these brands often nail that affordable luxury vibe.
Ace of the lifestyle.
Right. And maybe the biggest piece, social media. These celebs launch with millions of followers already paying attention. It's instant marketing reach.
That makes a ton of sense. But it can't be foolproof, can it?
Yeah.
You mentioned gin earlier. Didn't sound like the same success story.
Exactly. Gin's a really important counterpoint. In 2023, the overall gin market actually grew, maybe 4%. But celebrity gins, their volume declined by 1%.
Huh. So fame isn't a magic bullet.
Apparently not. It shows that even major star power can't always fight larger market trends or, maybe a category that's just getting crowded. Celebrity seems to amplify growth where it's already happening, like tequila, but it doesn't make a brand immune if the category itself hits a rough patch.
Okay, so the insight for you here is pretty clear. A famous face helps grab attention, absolutely, but it doesn't guarantee success if the market's not cooperating or if it's just saturated.
Well put.
All right, let's shift gears from the why to the how. We see these slick bottles. Maybe picture the celebrity tinkering in their own distillery. But what's the actual production reality?
Yeah, that image of, the celebrity personally tasting batches from the still, it's mostly just marketing. Mostly. The dominant model by far is contract distilling, sometimes called white label production, meaning instead of spending a fortune and dealing with the nightmare of building and running their own distillery, they partner with companies that already do it.
Ah, okay. Makes sense.
These existing distilleries might create a custom recipe for the celebrity brand, or they might offer spirit they already make, which the celebrity then bottles and markets under their name.
So it's really leveraging someone else's setup and expertise. Less hands-on distillation, more brand building.
For the vast majority, yes. You have distilleries like Griffo and Storyhouse Spirits out in California that openly advertise these kinds of services. They handle everything.
Right.
Think Justin Timberlake's Saza 901, Snoop Dogg's and Doggo Gin. Those are likely examples of this model. It's just a much, much faster way to get a product onto shelves.
But are there exceptions, cases where the celebrity really is more involved in making the actual liquid?
Oh, sure. There are definitely examples cited. Dan Aykroyd with Crystal Head Vodka really pushing the additive-free angle.
I remember that skull bottle.
Yeah. And George Clooney with Casamigos, the story there was always about him and Rande Gerber wanting a specific, smoother tequila profile just for themselves initially.
Okay.
So deeper involvement happens, but it seems to be less common than the contract distilling route. They're kind of the exceptions that highlight the rule.
Right. Which leads to this question I bet a lot of you are thinking. Are all these celebrity spirits secretly coming from, like, the same two buildings in LA or Texas or something? You hear those whispers, especially with tequila.
Yeah, the same few buildings theory. It's probably a bit of an exaggeration for all spirits across the U.S., but the contract distilling model definitely concentrates production.
How so?
Well, you naturally have certain facilities that specialize in this kind of multi-brand production. California has places like Griffo and Story House, plus big co-packers like Drink Pack, which also has huge operations in Texas now.
Okay.
And Texas has its own ecosystem, too. Think McConaughey's connection to Wild Turkey, George Strait with Código 1530. There are distilleries and co-packers there working with lots of brands, some celebrity, some not.
So not literally two buildings, but definite hubs. But tequila.
Yeah.
You mentioned the NOM system in Mexico makes things clearer.
Much clearer. The NOM number, that's the Norma Oficial Mexicana, is unique to each registered tequila distillery. And here's the kicker. There are over 1,400 tequila brands registered, but only about 140 distilleries actually making tequila right now.
Whoa. So simple math tells you.
Exactly. Many distilleries are producing tequila for dozens, sometimes scores, of different brands, including many, many celebrity brands.
Okay, give us the inside scoop. Which distilleries, which brands?
All right, we'll take NOM 1137. That's La Cofradia Distillery. It's produced, or has produced, a crazy number of brands. Bonita Platinum, Santana's Casa Noble, even at various points, 818 Tequila, Casamigos, Terramana. Some sources say over 60 brands have come out of there.
60. From one place.
Yep. Then you have NOM 1173, Tequilera Newton, made tequila for Julio Cesar Chavez, Timberlake's 901. NOM 1122 is Casa Huervo. They make their own huge brands plus others. NOM 1416, Productos Finos de Agave, makes the current Casamigos, also Clase Azul. NOM 1440, Campari Mexico. That's where the original Cabo Wabo was made, also Espolon. It's concentrated.
That paints a really clear picture. Same NOM, same distillery, same basic equipment, same process. So does that mean the tequila inside a bottle of brand A is pretty much identical to brand B if they share a NOM? That's the key insight for you, right?
It significantly increases the likelihood, let's put it that way. Not always identical down to the last molecule, maybe. Things like specific agave batches or barrel aging can differ.
Okay.
But fundamentally, they're using the same production line, the same stills, the same water source. The base spirit is likely very, very similar. And then you add in the possibility of things like flavor additives, especially at the huge distilleries.
Which aren't always disclosed, right?
Not always, clearly, no. That can create perceived differences. So yeah, the chance that you're getting a very similar liquid in differently branded, differently priced bottles, it's quite high in the tequila world.
So when you're paying that 73% premium, or whatever it is, you might really just be paying for the celebrity story, the bottle, the marketing, not necessarily the unique spirit.
That's a really critical takeaway for you, the consumer. While some celebrities, like the Casamigos guys, initially might have genuinely sought a specific profile, the structure of tequila production makes shared liquid the norm, not the exception. Something like only 2% of tequila brands actually have their own dedicated distillery.
Only 2%. Wow. That really reframes the whole thing. Which brings us right back to the core issue. Value. Are these brands delivering real value for that premium price? Or is it mostly hype designed for a quick buck?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Or in some cases, the billion-dollar question.
Right.
We talked about the price premium. A lot of that is driven by perceived value. You know, the status of drinking what your idol drinks, trusting their taste, wanting that association with their lifestyle.
A cool factor.
Exactly. But that doesn't always line up with the intrinsic value, the actual quality of the spirit, the craftsmanship, any real innovation. There's definitely a risk you're paying mostly for the name for what might just be a fairly standard product dressed up.
And how much is genuine passion from the celebrity versus just seeing a business opportunity? It's hard to tell sometimes.
It is. Authenticity really matters to consumers, though. They can often sniff out when it feels forced. Seeing guys like Bryan Cranston and Aaron Paul out there doing Costco tastings for Dos Hombres, or hearing about Clooney being involved in opening accounts for Casamigos early on, that feels genuine to people. The Rock with Terramana often comes across that way, too.
And the less authentic examples.
Well, some ventures have faced criticism, like Kendall Jenner's 818 launch had accusations of cultural appropriation, or Trump vodka, launched by someone famously teetotal. That didn't scream authenticity. Ultimately, just slapping your name on a bottle without doing the work, that usually doesn't end well.
What about innovation, though? Are any of these brands actually pushing the spirits world forward? Or are they just jumping into popular categories?
It's a mix. Many do just enter hot categories like tequila or whiskey without trying to reinvent the wheel. They rely on the celebrity pull.
Right.
But some are bringing interesting angles. We mentioned Jason Momoa's Meili vodka focusing on sustainability. Lewis Hamilton launched Alma Ve, a non-alcoholic agave spirit.
Interesting.
Beyonce's coming out with a whiskey, Sir Davis, talking about a unique mash bill. Emma Watson's Renee Gin uses upcycled grape skins and talks sustainable packaging. Steven Soderbergh brought attention to Singani, a niche Bolivian spirit, with Singani 63.
So some are definitely trying new things or focusing on specific values?
Yeah, they can broaden the audience, make spirits feel more accessible, or highlight things like sustainability. But again, many are playing it safe, category-wise. And even with innovation, the liquid itself still has to be decent, you know? Fame only gets you the first sale.
So bottom line, cash grab or genuine innovation, where does the balance lie?
I'd say the business model itself, especially the contract distilling and the clear build-to-sell pattern we see, leans heavily towards strategic financial play. Let's call it that.
Okay.
But that doesn't automatically mean the product is bad or there's zero passion involved. It's often a hybrid. But yeah, the primary motivation for many seems to be capturing that massive payday when a big company acquires them, like Diageo did with Casamigos. So for you listening, the insight is be skeptical of the hype, look beyond the famous face, and decide if the price feels right for the whole package, not just the celebrity connection.
Let's dive deeper into that build-to-sell model then.
Yeah.
It really seems central to this whole phenomena.
It absolutely is. You see this life cycle play out again and again. Launch, often positioned as a passion project or maybe just a smart business move. Then, hypergrowth, driven almost entirely by the celebrity's marketing power, social media, appearances, integrating it into their lifestyle.
Right.
And then, the exit. Acquisition by one of the big spirits conglomerates, Diageo, Pernod Ricard, Bacardi, Campari. That seems to be the goal for many.
And they pay huge premiums, right?
Yeah.
Casamigos, Aviation Gin. Those deals really set the benchmark.
Exactly. Casamigos potentially worth up to $1 billion. Aviation Gin reportedly sold for over $600 million. Those kinds of numbers make everyone with a recognizable name take notice.
Why is that model so attractive?
It lets celebrities monetize their fame incredibly quickly, especially in categories like tequila, where the production time isn't as long as, say, aged whiskey, and the profit margins on spirits are generally very healthy.
And for the big companies buying them, what's in it for them?
Growth. Access to trending categories like tequila and premium whiskey, and crucially, relevance with younger consumers who follow these celebrities. It's a shortcut to buzz and market share.
Okay, what about the money side? Beyond the huge exit numbers, what goes into launching these? How are they valued?
Well, the initial investment can vary. Sometimes the celebrity puts in their own capital. Sometimes they partner with investment firms. Sometimes it's more of a profit-sharing deal, like Diddy reportedly had with Ciroc Vodka, getting a huge chunk of the profit.
Right. So the returns can be massive if it hits.
Potentially life-changing. Think George Foreman making more from his grill than from boxing. Casamigos is the spirits equivalent. Bono's early Facebook investment is another parallel leveraging fame or connections for equity. And again, alcohol margins are good.
How do they figure out the valuation, though? $600 million for Aviation Gin. How do they land on that?
It's tricky, and specifics are usually kept private, but it's definitely not just based on current sales volume like a traditional company might be.
Okay.
They're looking at brand strength, growth potential, the demographics it reaches, and importantly, the continued promotional value the celebrity brings. That celebrity capital, their visibility and influence, is a huge, if intangible, asset. So those big valuations for Casamigos and Aviation likely reflected strategic value and projected future growth, way above typical multiples for mature brands.
So the buyers are betting on scaling it up with their own distribution and marketing muscle.
Exactly. They want fast-growing premium brands with proven consumer appeal, and they're willing to pay a premium, that sort of fame tax, because the celebrity gives it that initial rocket boost and continued visibility.
So it's clear fame is essential, but you said earlier it's not enough. What else separates the successes from the failures?
Authenticity is key. Does the celebrity connection feel real? Matthew McConaughey being the face of Wild Turkey, leaning into his Texas roots that feels congruent. Actual involvement from the celebrity matters too. Are they just lending a name, or are they actively engaged? And fundamentally, the product has to be decent. People might try it once because of the star, but they won't buy it again if it's bad.
Market timing helps too, I imagine.
Absolutely. Launching a tequila during this massive tequila boom, good timing. Trying to launch something in a category that's already declining, much harder. And then effective storytelling, using that celebrity narrative and social media reach smartly. It's a high-stakes game, but the potential rewards keep fueling the trend. Though with more scrutiny, fame alone won't guarantee that billion-dollar exit anymore. Due diligence is getting tougher.
This whole model feels like a real evolution from older celebrity deals. How does it stack up against, say, the George Foreman grill?
It's a very different structure, generally. George Foreman was huge, obviously, but his initial deal was mostly licensing his name and image, plus a profit share, reportedly 40%, which was massive, earning him millions a month at its peak. And later he got a big buyout, like $138 million. But he was primarily the promoter, the face. He didn't develop the grill itself. His role was endorsement, implying personal approval.
Okay. What about something like the Thigh Master and Suzanne Summers? That felt more involved.
It was. That's a closer analogy in some ways. She and her husband took ownership, rebranded it, and she became the absolute driving force behind its marketing, especially through those iconic infomercials. She built a broader brand around it. It was more than endorsement. She was a co-founder and the engine.
And then you have the Trump approach, licensing the name everywhere before his presidency. Vodka, steaks, water, buildings.
Right. That was primarily a brand licensing strategy. He charged fees or royalties to put the Trump name on various products and projects, leveraging the perceived prestige. But in most cases, especially consumer goods like the vodka or steaks, third parties handled the actual manufacturing and management. The celebrity liquor model today often involves much deeper equity.
So what are the key differences between these modern liquor deals and those older models?
Ownership and equity are big ones. Celebrities like Clooney, Ryan Reynolds with Aviation Gin, Diddy with Ciroc, they often have direct stakes, real skin in the game. It's more than just a licensing fee like Trump typically had, or even Foreman's initial profit share. They're often co-owners or founders invested in the sale value.
And the authenticity piece.
There's usually a much stronger emphasis on personal passion and involvement in the creation story, even if contract distilling is used. It's positioned as their tequila, their gin. Compare that to Trump vodka, hard to sell authenticity when the figurehead doesn't drink.
Right.
Then there's the product itself. Alcohol is highly regulated, carries social and health implications. That brings different responsibilities than selling grills or exercise equipment. Marketing has to navigate complex rules, especially around reaching young people.
And the exit strategy seems more defined now.
Definitely. The build-to-sell playbook is very prominent in liquor, aiming for those big acquisitions by spirits giants. The valuations are driven by factors specific to this high-margin trending category and the strategic fit for acquirers, leading to potentially higher multiples than you might see for other types of celebrity-endorsed goods.
Plus, more risk for the celebrity's own brand.
For sure. Direct ownership means their personal reputation is deeply intertwined with the product's success and image. A misstep with the brand can damage the celebrity, and vice versa. It's a shift towards greater control and financial participation, but also greater responsibility.
It sounds like navigating all those regulations you mentioned for alcohol marketing. Endorsements must be a huge focus.
Oh, absolutely. It's critical. You've got the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, and the Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau, the TTB, watching closely.
What are the main things the FTC looks for?
Their big focus, especially with the updated 2023 endorsement guides, is transparency. Any material connection, payment, free product, ownership stake between the celebrity and the brand has to be clearly disclosed. Think hashtag ad or hashtag sponsored right at the beginning of a social media post.
No hiding it in a sea of hashtags.
Exactly. Clear and conspicuous. And the endorsement has to be honest. If they imply they drink it, they actually need to be a user. Claims have to be truthful, not deceptive. And crucially for alcohol, the celebrity endorser's audience needs to be verified as predominantly 21 plus SAC.
Are they enforcing this?
Seems like it. There have been watchdog groups calling for investigations into influencer marketing for brands like Ciroc. So the scrutiny is there. It puts the onus on both the brand and the celebrity endorser.
Okay, and what about the TTB? What's their role?
The TTB handles the specifics of alcohol labeling and advertising. Every single label needs approval, that's the COLA, Certificate of Label Approval, before the product can be sold. And all advertising has to be consistent with that approved label. It needs mandatory info, like who the advertiser is, what the product class is. They check for misleading statements, any prohibited health claims, make sure the alcohol content is stated correctly.
Do they monitor social media too?
They do. They recently updated guidelines acknowledging social media, allowing things like links or tags back to a compliant website and influencer posts to cover some mandatory info, but the core stuff still needs to be accessible. They're also looking at potentially adding mandatory alcohol facts panels, like nutrition labels and allergen disclosures. More transparency is the trend.
What happens if brands or celebrities mess up on these rules? What are the penalties?
They can be pretty severe. TTB violations, like missing the required health warning statement, can lead to civil penalties. We're talking potentially over $25,000 per day per violation.
Per day?
Yeah. And the FTC can issue notices and seek significant monetary penalties for deceptive endorsements, potentially tens of thousands per violation.
So compliance is crucial, especially for these high-profile brands.
Absolutely critical. High visibility means high scrutiny. And think about that build-to-sell model again. Any compliance issues found during due diligence by a potential buyer. That can seriously hurt the valuation or even kill the deal entirely. Public companies especially don't want that kind of regulatory risk. Strong compliance is essential for preserving brand value.
Got it. So looking ahead now, where's this whole trend going? What does the future hold for celebrity hooch?
Well, I think consumer expectations are definitely shifting. People are demanding more authenticity, more transparency. Just slapping a famous name on a bottle isn't cutting it as much anymore.
People are getting savvier.
Exactly. And values matter more. Things like sustainability, ethical production, like we saw with Watson's Gin or Momoa's vodka, that resonates especially with younger consumers. Celebrity social responsibility could become a real differentiator.
So less sizzle, more substance.
Hopefully. Brands will need to show genuine commitment, not just greenwashing, or they'll face backlash. And social media. It remains vital, obviously. Something like 70% of alcohol brands are active, but the compliance challenges aren't going away.
How might social media evolve for these brands?
We'll probably see more interactive stuff, live Q&As, maybe virtual reality or augmented reality experiences, trying to build a deeper connection. It'll be about more than just pushing the product. Offering exclusive content, digital events.
It's a double-edged sword, right?
Totally. Huge reach, but also huge potential for any controversy or hint of inauthenticity to blow up instantly. And loyalty built just on fleeting celebrity buzz, that's risky. Brands need something more lasting, consistent quality, a real identity beyond the star.
What about the ethical side? Marketing alcohol, especially with aspirational figures.
That tension isn't going away. Concerns about influencing young people, normalizing drinking, they're persistent. Studies suggest exposure to alcohol marketing does increase youth consumption. You see things like widespread support in the EU for banning alcohol ads targeting young people.
And the wellness trend colliding with alcohol promotion.
Yeah, celebrities who promote health and wellness but also market alcohol. That contradiction is getting called out more. Think J-Lo, The Rock, Emma Watson even. It's a tricky line to walk between commercial interests and public health concerns. That conflict will likely intensify as these brands become even more visible online.
How are the smaller guys, the craft distillers, coping with all this celebrity noise?
It's tough. Craft spirits are a vital part of the market, but still a small slice overall, maybe under 5% by volume. These huge celebrity brands compete directly for attention, for shelf space, for taps and bars. It makes it harder for small producers relying on unique stories and local appeal.
But could there be an upside for craft?
Potentially, yes. As some consumers get cynical about perceived cash-grab celebrity brands, they might actively seek out craft spirits as the more authentic alternative.
Right.
Craft can really lean into its strengths. Local production, small batches, traceable ingredients, the founder's personal story. It's the opposite of the perception of some big outsourced celebrity spirits. We might see that celebrity versus craft narrative get stronger, helping craft define its value.
Okay, last question. Are there any, totally unexplored corners of this phenomenon, things we still need to figure out?
Oh, definitely. What happens to these brands long term after the acquisition, after the initial hype dies down? Do they maintain loyalty? That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
Also, really digging into how different types of deals, equity versus profit share versus licensing, affect the celebrity's actual involvement and the brand's success. And objective quality testing, blind taste tests, chemical analysis comparing celeb brands to non-celeb brands at the same price point.
That would be revealing.
For sure. And getting better data on how much the celebrity factor actually inflates valuation multiples in those big deals. One other thought. Could we see a rise of niche celebrity brands?
Meaning?
Like micro-influencers, maybe chefs, musicians with specific fan bases, launching spirits targeted just at their dedicated followers, hyper-authentic, super targeted, maybe building stronger loyalty within a niche, sidestepping the fatigue with mass-market celebrity stuff. Could be interesting.
Fascinating. Okay, so let's try and wrap this all up. What are the big takeaways from our deep dive today?
Well, we've seen the massive rise of these brands, often outperforming the market, especially tequila. We learned that contract distilling is the dominant production method, and the NOM system in Mexico really highlights how concentrated that can be.
Right, leading to questions about similar liquid in different bottles.
Exactly. We tackled the whole perceived value versus intrinsic value debate, the quest for authenticity, and how innovation plays a role sometimes.
And the build-to-sell business model seems key.
Very key. Driven by huge potential returns and acquisitions. We also covered the crucial legal and regulatory landscape, the FTC and PTB rules they have to follow.
Plus, future trends like sustainability demands, the ethics of alcohol marketing, and the impact on craft distillers.
That covers the main points.
So, back to that fundamental question we started with. Are these brands genuine value, or are they mostly marketing plays?
And the answer, as you've probably gathered, isn't a simple yes or no. It's usually a mix.
Right.
The business strategy often looks like a sophisticated marketing play aimed at a big sale. But that doesn't mean all the products are bad or that no celebrity involved has genuine passion. It really varies.
It's complicated.
It is. There's a spectrum of authenticity and quality out there.
Okay, so maybe the final thought for you, the listener, is this. Now that you know more about how these spirits are often made and marketed, with that increasing transparency, especially around production, will you start demanding more than just a famous name when you're choosing a premium spirit? Something to mull over next time you're browsing the shelves.
Definitely food for thought.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.